And good afternoon. Welcome to Cool Springs. Today is Wednesday, November the 16th. Next Thursday will be Thanksgiving Day on our national calendar. A lot of people are probably already making plans to do things like, are you going to travel to go see relatives, or maybe some relatives are going to come visit you, or are you going to stay at home? What foods are you going to have? Are you going to prepare a holiday meal at home, possibly go out to dinner? And there'll be all kinds of special programs available on TV, and maybe some theaters and community centers will have all kinds of events to teach about Thanksgiving. In our modern day and time, Christian parents particularly have to be careful to make sure that if you have a child or a young person in your home, that they get the truth about the holiday Thanksgiving, because truth is being twisted left and right. People are now being taught that the Pilgrims came for economic freedom and that they were abusive to the native peoples that were here. History contains good things and bad things that happened. But what's being systematically taken out of our national conversation is the story of God's involvement with the Pilgrims, with our nation. I've got a couple of books here that I've had in my library for some time. This one is called Thanksgiving, a Harvest Celebration, and I picked it up at a Christian bookstore. You can pick up good books to share with your kids at any number of Christian or even secular booksellers and retailers. And this other one, Squanto and the Miracle of Thanksgiving. This is the one I want to zero in on today. When the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock in 1620, in November, they thought they were further south than what they actually were. Their ship had gotten off course. They had to hurriedly build a community hut to be able to get off the ship and have a place to stay. It was a very hard winter. Many of the Pilgrim passengers died. It got to the point where some of the children who were on the ship were having to take on adult responsibilities because there was so much sickness. They survived that first winter, but with a lot of losses. And the following spring and summer, as they're learning how to adjust to this land, they had run across something that surprised them. The area was clearly an area that had been inhabited, but it was now vacant. The Pilgrims one day ran into an Indian by the name of Squanto. To their enormous surprise, Squanto was able to communicate with them in English, and they had no idea how that happened. This is a wonderful, wonderful book. I will probably loan it to our church library for a while, or see if I can get another copy of it, because it tells Squanto's story, and you may be able to look it up online or to look up some books of your own. Squanto was a member of the Patuxet Native American group. Some of the fur traders, because the New World had been discovered and there were traders going back and forth, had been friendly to the Indians for a little while, but then they decided to capture some of the natives and carry them back to Europe as slaves. Squanto, as a boy, was one of the ones who was taken slave. He wound up initially in what was the country of Spain, and he was put up on a slave auction block. There were a group of monks, religious holy men, who paid for him, not to make him their slave, but to provide for his freedom. The monks took him under their care. He lived with them. They saw to it that he got safe passage to England, where he was cared for by other people who taught him how to speak the English language. and who, as he continued to grow, promised to try to come up with the money to send him back to his native land. Squanto was in Europe for about 7 years. By the time he's an older teenager, his sponsors in England have managed to find him passage on a ship where he can work his way as part of the crew to get back to the area he was taken from. The ship lands, and it's at the area where he used to live. But everybody in his village is gone. He goes to a neighboring tribe, meets up with the chief Samoset, who explains to him that everybody in his village died of a disease. He's the only one left. He will spend time with Samoset and that local tribe, and when the pilgrims arrive, Squanto, though he has gone through some tragic circumstances, has been divinely appointed to be there, to know the language, and to explain to the pilgrims why this land looked like it had been occupied by human beings, but is now vacant. He will show them many skills that they are going to need to learn how to survive in the new world. He'll show them how to put kernels of corn in the ground and put fish in there to fertilize the soil, covering it up so that it'll make the crops grow faster. He'll show them how to hunt for the right kind of fish, where they can find the shallow pools to get the proteins and the nutrients they need from the sea. He'll befriend them. By the time fall comes around, the pilgrims who came to America for religious freedom, I would suggest strongly that if you have a young person who's at least middle school or older age, that you have them look up the Mayflower Compact and the writings of William Bradford, one of the early leaders of the Pilgrims, and read the documents from the source people themselves, how they had come to the New World seeking religious freedom and how they wanted to establish a society based on godly principles. The Pilgrims were believers in God. They had studied the scriptures. The Bible that they brought with them was the Geneva Bible. The King James Bible was just being developed in 1611. They brought the Geneva Bible with them, and they used it and read from it regularly, and they understood from reading the Bible that Israel as a nation was called to celebrate certain feasts. One of those feasts being the Feast of Tabernacles, celebrated in the fall of the year, where they would be celebrating the harvest. The Pilgrims borrowed from that idea and decided to host a party to celebrate God's having brought them through that first difficult year. And they could clearly see God's hand in providing not only for where their ship landed, how they had survived the disease, how they had been able to survive the weather, how God had provided this young man who knew the language and could communicate with them. And they invited Squanto and Chief Samoset and 90 of his braves to come to a feast. It was the first Thanksgiving. It wasn't held in November, it was held in October because they understood the biblical feast calendar cycle. Our celebration of Thanksgiving being set for the fourth Thursday in November actually dates to the time of Abraham Lincoln. But if you want to have a God conversation with your family, regardless of whether you have teenagers, middle schoolers, elementary school age kids, or maybe it's just you as an adult needing to learn this story for the first time yourself, look up the story of Squanto, look up Samoset, look up the Patuxent Indians, and discover that they had a 50-year treaty of friendship that was kept by both sides, and stop to think about the fact that, yes, it was tragic for Squanto and some of his friends to be mistreated and abused by the fur traders, who captured them and carried them to Europe as slaves. But God's put some of his people in the right place at the right time to redeem Squanto, to save him from just disappearing into history as somebody we never hear of. They redeemed him from slavery. They got him to a safer place, moving from Spain to England, where he learned the language, where people befriended him and allowed him to get back to his native land so that he could be in the right place at the right time to be used by God to take care of strangers who had come to the land, who needed his help. God was working out his plan for each individual's life and for the nation that would come many years later, a nation founded on Judeo-Christian principles. So the story of Squanto is an important story for you to have a God conversation with your young people about. Thanks for watching.